Welcome back to another digital conversation. Our key concepts this time around, again, are focusing on your behaviors. Remember we said some are skills that you can learn, writing, developing written presentations, developing skilled PowerPoint presentations. But again, these are the behaviors that you can learn and practice and exhibit in the organization. So the first we're going to deal with is, in this module, the whole concept of effective listening. We have 5 elements: the concept of 360-degree listening, some signals that you may be talking too much, or you may be distracted too much and not listening to the message, some of the barriers that you need to be aware of to helping you listen effectively, some ways to improve, and then why you should bother doing this. Today, particularly as you move up in the organization, you have to be prepared to listen all the way around you as an individual in an organizational setting. You need to learn to listen carefully to your boss. So again, we talked about high context cultures where you have to read the environment, you have to read the boss's subtle messages to pick up what's going on. And every boss is a little quirky. I've yet to work in my too many years of experience with a boss that was mentally stable. They all tend to be a little over the top, and your job is to be able to listen effectively to them so you can hear what they need done. Your peers are critical. That in many organizations, when it comes time for promotion, the conversations are with the people that work with you at your same level. How effective is Jerry in working with teams? Has he helped you out of a tough situation? Do you see him as somebody that's focused on the good of the organization? And then we need to listen to employees, and that's a major challenge. Oftentimes, your employees are not going to be as skilled technically maybe as you are. They may not have the life experiences that you have. They may not have the educational level that you have. And you have to be able to quiet yourself enough to be able to hear what it is they need. We need to be paying attention to our customers. And those can be internal customers if you're in a service job within the organization, human resources, accounting, finance, those kind of jobs. You have to listen to the people within the organization that you provide services to. And then we have to be able to listen to what people outside of our organization are saying about our organization. I have the privilege of being able to work with folks in healthcare, and it's fascinating now. One of their challenges is to help create a healthy community. So to create a healthy community, the executives within healthcare and their staffs are going out in the community to have conversations with the police department. What kind of issues are you running into with fires and the EMTs? What kind of calls are you responding to? To the public health officials in a community, what macro trends are you seeing? And the conversations with the non-government organizations that are providing direct service to different parts of our community. In Sacramento, we have Loaves and Fishes is a very active group. So again, it isn't just listening to your peer group, it's being able to listen to all aspects of communication around you. Some signs that you may not be a particularly good listener. Besides a broken relationship in your personal life or a broken marriage, in business we have to pay attention to our employees that are going above us in the chain of command. What that tells us is we're not listening to what it is that our employees want or need, and we feel the need, or they feel the need to go to somebody above you to get their problems resolved. So again, another warning signal. Oftentimes, if you're the last person in the organization to know something critical is happening, again, your peers don't value you enough, or they see you as somebody that doesn't listen, or you're not listening to what they're telling you and you're not getting the information that you need about a strategic direction in the organization. You're continually putting out fires. So you're having to respond to employees that may be engaging in something that causes issues within the organization. If you'd have been listening to them, they may have told you that they're short of resources or that they're engaged in a conflict with a customer, and you could have intervened and helped them resolve that issue before it became a roaring fire. And then you find yourself continually repeating yourself. Why is it that these folks just don't understand what I want done? Well, what you should be asking is, why is it that I'm communicating in a way that they're not hearing me, and I'm not effectively checking to hear that they're not in sync with what I want, or they were confused about what it was that I needed them to accomplish. Here's some of these behaviors that your author points out that I've seen in folks. People come into class and they look like the two people on the right. I'm looking for eye contact and they're shopping online, or they're chatting with their friends, or they're doing something and they're not paying any attention to what is going on. And then after class they say that instructor was so boring. Well, you're going to have boring instructors and you're going to have boring bosses. It's your job to develop the discipline to work through it and hear what it is that you need to hear. We also see people or hear people say, so-and-so is a bad fill in the blank. And if you're continually pointing out the flaws in other people, that also means you're probably not a very good listener. You're not hearing to the message that they have to offer. Again, like your dominant communicator, you have to be the brightest person in the room. You tend to talk over other people. You tend to interrupt other people. You want to be the one that's the last to speak. Again, the farther up you go in the organization, the better listener you have to be. And that may sound strange because you think people at the top have all this authority and their job is to be sending and broadcasting. Really, when you listen to very effective senior leaders, they work hard at listening carefully on a 360-degree basis. You also could tend to be listening to only what you want to hear. In your HROB 101 class and in your psych classes, I'm sure they talked about selective perception. So all of us have to work at listening to what we don't necessarily want to hear. And we want to collect data with somebody that disagrees with us. And you're also taking notes and multitasking. So pay attention to, if you're a note taker, are you listening really for the message that the individual has to offer? Taking notes is good. It's a trigger that helps you recall what went on, but you don't want to be so fixated on note-taking that you aren't listening to the message. Also, if you're a habitual multitasker, the research is coming out and it's very, very rigorous, and it's very abundant, saying you just think you can multitask. The reality is, when we test people that are multitasking, we find that instead of doing one thing really well, they may do 4 things exceptionally poor or mediocre. So again, focus, 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 and make sure that you're paying attention to the message that's being sent to you. There's many reasons why we have a challenge listening. One is it's easy to get distracted. I'm not 20 years old anymore, and I find that for me to do my work, I have to limit the distractions when I'm working on something critical. I mean, it may sound bizarre, but we just did a little remodel in my home office, and to get my work done during the remodel, I had them soundproof the entire room and then put on very thick doors on both entrances to the room, so that noise is completely blocked from outside of that workspace, so I'm not distracted. The phones don't ring in that room, so there's no phones coming in, no messages coming in. I can zero in on the task. There's also personal ways that we get distracted. One is your physical well-being. All of us have a finite amount of energy. And there are times when our energy is low, like our lady on the right. You're tired, and it's very, very hard to be able to focus. There's also psychological barriers to our listening. Again, we may be socialized in a way that we just have a hard time listening. Again, if you're a dominant communicator, if your personality is very extroverted and outgoing, you have to work at becoming more of that quiet person so you can get through. The other is attitude and bias. And in our last discussion, I'm going to talk a bit about intercultural communication and the challenges that I see when Americans try to do business, particularly in emerging markets. And part of that is their attitude or bias. We tend to live in a cocoon in the United States, and when we're exposed to people that are different, our bias and our prejudice gets in the way. You can also develop an elitist attitude where you spend a lot of time going to university, now you come out with a degree, and you now be college educated, and the people that work for you are not. And now you're carrying a bias that they may not be as bright as you are, not as quick, and you're not willing to listen to what they have to say. And then there's gender bias. We don't want to talk about it. We're getting more and more politically correct, so we can't have these tough conversations, but the reality is there is a clear gender bias, and you have to be aware of it. When you come in and you're listening to somebody from a gender different than yours, do you have a bias that's filtering that, or can you work past that to get the message? And the other is semantics. And this gets really tricky when you start to work across organizations and then you start to work globally, because different words have different meanings in different organizations, and that can be a struggle for you to sort out what is it that the person is saying. And we all do not want to appear to be not too bright. So we're hesitant to say, excuse me, you just used this term. Can you help me understand what you mean by that term? That's a bit challenging because it's sending a signal that you don't know. And again, we all want to project an image that we are pretty much all-knowing. So we have to work through that. So some ways that we can improve. Your author, Hamilton, pointed out that there are different stages that occur when you're receiving a message. And if we can understand what's going on in each of those stages and start to work through the filters, we can be a much better listener. So the first is the sensing stage. And there we're receiving messages that are coming in either verbally or visually, and we all have a set of filters that help us start to process all this information and data that we're being bombarded with. If we didn't have the filters, we'd go crazy. So filtering isn't bad, it keeps us sane, but like we talked about with attitudes or bias, you have to be aware that you have certain filters that are stronger than others, and we need to be aware that we may be missing part of the message. Now the data has gone through your sensing and your filtering process, and now you're trying to interpret it. And this is our perception, and we're judging the intentions of the person that's speaking to us, and we're trying to decide the reasons behind the action or the message that they're sending. So we're attributing to them a whole set of emotional aspects to that message, and we have to test to make sure that we really understand what it is they're trying to accomplish. Are they trying to help us, or are they trying to harm us? And be very, very clear in differentiating between the two. And then we have to evaluate our feelings about that person and the credibility that they have delivering the message. And we find an interesting dynamic when we put you into teams and work together. At the very start, most of the team members have low credibility because you haven't worked with each other. And you're getting into this stage and conflict tends to occur because you're now trying to evaluate the message that this person is sending. I say to you, I will be responsible for drafting this memo, and I will have it to you on Friday. Now you've sensed it, you've interpreted it, and now you're evaluating, is Jerry somebody that I trust enough to deliver what he says he will deliver? And then we respond, and these are the verbal and nonverbal signals that you're sending to the other person that you either understand or you don't understand the message. So work hard on the filters on what's coming in. Work hard in understanding the intentions of the message that's being sent to you and the person sending it. Make sure your evaluations of the person and the message are right, and then respond appropriately so that the person gets feedback that, okay, I've now given Jerry this message. I'm sending him a signal I understand it. I'm sending him a signal that I trust him to deliver. And then we need to practice more and more and more. And listening is not texting. Listening is not emailing. Listening is a close proximity to the other person and engaging in behaviors that there's a clear connection between you and them. The reality is, if you'll take the time to work hard at this while you're in university and practice it, it is going to separate you from the huddled masses out there looking for work. Because you're going to go into a job interview, you're going to be somebody that has very skilled listening abilities. You have somebody that the other party that's interviewing you understands that this person is somebody with good interpersonal skills, and it's going to make you a very valued part of their team. So practice, go out, and get yourself the career that you want.